Hello everyone and welcome to the tutorial on Spring Fundamentals Module 2. In this module, we'll discuss about Spring architecture, prerequisites, we'll do a sample project without Spring, we'll get to know about configuration and pain points of our application. Then we will know how to download a Spring. So let's talk about the basic architecture of Spring. If we say that Spring was developed to make existing code easier. Before it came around, we used some design patterns from the J2E blueprints to help establish better code and repeatable processes. These blueprints help to establish a consistent way of doing things, but often make code brittle and untested. Suppose if we say that if you ever had to recompile code because you are moving to a different environment or change things like URLs or connection strings because of your environment, then you realize that these are the things we are trying to fix by using Spring. This problem is referred to as write once, run anywhere. We just want the actual implementation and not hard coded inside the application. This is where Spring architecture will help us. Now let's see the prerequisites required in this tutorial. So first we will require Java 8, Maven. We'll require an IDE like Eclipse or Spring Tool Suite STS. We'll require Tomcat for Spring Boot. Now let's create a sample project without Spring so that we can understand what are the differences between the coding or coding between the Spring and without Spring. So let's see. Let's create a small project. So we will create a new Maven project. Click on the create a simple project. We just need a simple project right now. Click on next. Group ID will be com.sf. This is Spring sample. Is the artifact ID. We don't need to change the version. We'll just click on finish. Let's create a standard DTO class. We'll keep this DTO class under model package com.sf.model. We'll get the getter status. And we'll create a noworks constructor too. So our DTO class is ready now. Now let's create our repository IAML class. This repository class we will keep under the repository package. Named it as Hibernate Customer Repository IAML. It is actually a stub repository rather than a Hibernate repository, as it will not be wired to Hibernate. We'll set the first name and last name here. So we have created the Hibernate Custom Repository IAML class, and we have defined a method find all. Mm, Now we extract interface from this class. I'll write the name as custom repository. And our interface is created. Next thing is to create our customer service layer where all our business logic will be added. It is a service class, so we'll keep it in the package of service. The method names can be same. There is no issue with that. So this is where business logic will reside. This is also where we create web services, where the heart of the web service would be the actual interface, which will be in the web tier, but the business logic will reside in this service tier. Notice that we have a hard-coded reference to our customer repository instance. This is where Spring starts to step in so that we don't have these pieces as hard-coded inside of our application. This we will see in the next example. So now, just like repository, we'll create an interface of this service class. From here, you have to go to refactor and then extract interface. Now we'll create an application class to run this. We'll keep it in a default folder. Mm, we'll keep this out to get the first name and last name. So here, application creates an instance of customer service object. Customer service object then calls the customer repository, which has find all. Then it creates the instance of the object and returns the value of these. Now if you see, the code looks a little verbose. So now let's clean up the code and see different injection methods that we can go through so that we don't have hard-coded reference in there. Now let's talk about the configuration. Spring is all about removing configuration from the application. These configuration code make things brittle. If we talk about testing, it's not the testing that's actually hard, but the configuration of the code that is hard. Now, if we talk about pain points of our application, customer service inside the customer service IAMPL should not know that it is using Hibernate specifically. We have already abstracted it to an interface. And it is a good example where we could use a design pattern like factory pattern to abstract that out of this code. But Spring makes this even easier for us. So whenever we have an interface and it's tied to a concrete implementation, we should try to abstract that out of the code so that the application is not hard coded anymore. Now let's talk about Spring download. We can download Spring Framework using the dependency, adding the dependency in the pom.xml. So there we will add the group ID like org.spring framework, Spring context as an artifact ID and version, the specific version. Right now we will be using like 4.3.2 release. So currently we'll use this dependency. So here the dependency is org.spring framework, Spring context is the artifact ID and version is 4.3.2 release. Or you can go to the spring.io website and directly create your project and export it from there and import it in your uh, IDE. So in both ways you can download Spring framework. So in this module we have gone through the basics of Spring architecture, prerequisites required to work on Spring framework. We did one small sample project without Spring. We understood about the configuration and the pain points of our application. And later, we understood how to download Spring Framework for our application. This is the end of module 2. In later modules, we will get to know how to use Spring Framework in our application and which are the ways in which we can use Spring Framework in our application coding.